reports to see what data is returned, only to find out that's not really what you needed. And it can be so frustrating. So today I'm going to talk about sales analysis, merchandise analysis. These are my favorite go-to reports. I find that either of these two reports will answer 90% of my reporting needs. Outside of that, there are some merchandise reports that are pretty helpful: inventory status, inventory history, and a couple of valuation reports. And we'll go over and talk about all of those reports today. So first I want to talk about sales by analysis. You'll find that under sales history reports, sales analysis by group. The beauty of sales analysis by group is it is designable. You can pick your own quantitative values. A sales analysis by group will only report on posted sales, and a feature of sales analysis is the fact that you can have comparative date ranges, up to 3, and they can be any 3 dates that you like. Now there's a mirrored report of the sales history by group called unposted sales analysis. And you'll find that under point of sale, reports, unposted sales analysis. Like the sales history by group, it's designable. And the only difference between this report and the sales history by group is the fact that this report only focuses on unposted sales. So your sales today, during the day before you post. Now, merchandise analysis can be found under reports, reports, merchandise analysis, and it is designable. And the beauty of a merchandise analysis report is it will let you add multiple data types to a report. So what's a data type? Well, sales is a data type. Inventory on hand is a data type. Receiving is a data type. Purchasing is a data type. Adjustments, all data types. So this report, unlike the sales analysis, will let you look at sales and on hand on the same report, where the sales history by group only looks at sales. Another nice thing about the merchandise analysis report is if you are multi-store, you can actually see location detail within the report. And there are KPIs. That's fancy for key product indicators. Things like weeks on hand, stock to sales, turn, gross margin, return on investment, all available elements within that report. Then we have the inventory status report. Now, the inventory status report, there's actually 6 reports in here for a single store or multi-store. They're all quantitative reports where you can see you're on hand, you're min-max, you're on PO, you're on orders through POs, your last received, your last sold, the last time you counted the item. And if you sell apparel, you can actually see grid detail within this report. Inventory history. This is a report I use to audit an item. So if I'm looking at an item in inventory and I have a curious question as to how the quantity got to be the current value or the cost got to be the current value, this is the report I'm going to run because it will show me each and every transaction that affected that item. Then there are valuation reports, and there's actually 3 valuation reports. There's a retail value report, so obviously that's going to tell you the retail value of your inventory. And what's nice about that report is it actually has beginning and ending balances. So you can put in a date range, and the beginning balance will be as of the beginning date range, and the ending balance will be as of the ending date range. Then there's historical valuation. Historical valuation will look backwards to a single point in time to tell you the value of your inventory as of that single point. For example, I want to know what the value of my inventory was in January 1st, 2020. The historical valuation will tell me what it was. Then there's valuation. Now, the valuation report will look at your inventory value right now at this very moment in time. And again, we're going to look at all these reports right now. So I'm going to exit the PowerPoint presentation, minimize it, open up Counterpoint, and we'll get started with sales history by group. Now you can see down here, I made all these reports favorites. And if you don't know how to make a favorite, all you do is go to whatever module you want or report you want, hover over it, click on the star, and then Counterpoint will add it to your favorites bar. And your favorites are user specific, which is pretty nice. But I am going to show you how to manually get to the sales analysis by group report. It starts here in sales history, reports, sales analysis by group. Now there are a lot of reports in here and a few decisions you need to make. So the first decision is how many columns are going to be on the report. Traditional is 5, then you have 7, 10, 11. I typically recommend, to stick to around 7 so everything fits nicely on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and it just gives you a nice clean report that doesn't wrap. Sometimes when you get as high up as 11 columns, the reports tend to wrap, and not that there's anything wrong with that. I think it just makes them more difficult to read. So I'm going to start off with a 7 column. Now in this group by, there is a list, lots and lots of reports in this list. Now I typically stick to the reports that say ticket history line and ticket history because these types of reports are actually looking at your tickets, your completed posted tickets. So what's the difference between ticket history line and ticket history? Think of a receipt. When your receipts print, if you look at them, they're really in 3 sections. You have a header, the date, the cashier, the time. You have a footer, subtotal, tax, total. And then you have a body. And the body is the items that you sold. So ticket history line reports tend to focus on the merchandise. Ticket history reports tend to focus on the header, footer information. So I'm going to start off with building just a simple ticket history line item number report. I just want to see all my all my sales by items. Now it defaults in this print line to top 10. Well, you can have bottom 10 if you like, and you don't even have to stick with 10. This number can be 11, 20, 100, whatever you like. But for today, I'm going to select all. Print in order by. It defaults to item number, so it prints by item number order, but that's not incredibly practical, especially if you're doing a top seller or bottom seller. So you want to use this drop down, and there's lots of choices here, but I typically stick to this value called sales. Now notice there's lots of sales values here. All these sales values are theoretical, meaning if I sold at full price, what would my sales have been? Where sales is your true raw net sales after discounts and before taxes. So I typically choose this or quantity sold. We'll choose sales for today. Now, if I were to do a top and bottom, then it would pick my top 10 or my bottom 10. Then we have our report periods. When you set your report periods, I'd like you to use dynamic dates. And all of these are dynamic dates. The only one that isn't dynamic is custom. When you select a dynamic date and you save the report, then anytime you load the report, it's going to look to your current computer date and automatically assign that date to this report. So if I were to save this report and run it tomorrow, it would say 1/1 to 4/8. By the way, for those of you on a standard calendar year, there's no difference between year-to-date company and year-to-date, or month-to-date company and month-to-date. Month-to-date company, year-to-date company, week-to-date company are for people who have defined non-standard calendars in Counterpoint, like a fiscal calendar that runs from April to March. A feature of sales analysis by group is comparative dates. Now, when you select the comparative dates, by default, it's looking to my top date and going to the year before and the year before that. You can make these two comparison dates any date range you like. It just defaults to, what this is minus 1 year, minus 2 years. So any date range. So it could be this month versus last month versus the month before, this week versus last week versus the week before, or random dates. Down here under store, I've selected my main. If you select all stores because you have multiple stores, Counterpoint will take all those sales figures and combine them. So there's no mechanism with sales analysis by group to say, oh, if I choose all stores, just show me on the same report what the main sold, and then on a different section, show me what my East store sold. It will just combine the sales figures. So I'm just going to leave this at main for now. Under select columns, these are the quantitative values that you can pick. There are no descriptive values. All these values here have to do with numbers and money. By default, sales, profit, number of tickets, and average ticket are here. If I want to add a value, like I want to add cost, I'm going to double click on cost, or I could highlight and click on the arrow. If I want to remove a value, I can double click on it or highlight and use the arrow. But I'm going to go ahead and add cost. And I don't need that. I didn't mean to choose that. And I'm going to add quantity sold. Now, I really don't like the arrangement of the columns. I would really like to see my cost value next to sales. So I can click on it, hold down my left click and drag it. But there's not a lot of control when you do that. See, that was just dumb luck. There's more control if you highlight it and use the move up button. Then over to the right, dollar rounding. If you like to see exact figures, uncheck this. So if you sold $23.22 of an item, you'll see $23.22 on the report. If you choose dollar rounding and you sold $23.22, your sales will say 23. So I like to uncheck that. Now, if you look down here at the bottom, you can see I've selected 6 out of 7 available columns. So if I go over that, see what happens down here? It turns red, kind of a visual cue of, hey, I thought you were running a 7-column report, but you have picked 8 columns. So I'll just go ahead and get rid of those. This quantity rounding is dependent on if you are using what we call quantity decimals. In other words, you sell coffee, you sell it by the ounce, and you sell it by the pound. So you're selling fractions of a whole. So if you don't want Counterpoint rounding the quantity sold to the nearest integer, then you would uncheck quantity rounding. But I don't have any of that, so I'll just leave it checked. So it doesn't hurt to leave it checked. Then we have filters, a ticket history filter, a ticket history line filter. And these are the filters I stick with because, again, they're looking at your ticket history. So now I'm going to preview and see how my report looks. And it looks lovely. And because I ranked by sales, the item that has generated the most dollars pulls to the top. And then you see this percent to totals. This is pretty cool. I like looking at this. So percent to totals is telling you, well, out of all the dollars you collected in this date range up here, you can attribute 45% of those dollars to this item. Same thing with your cost and also with your quantity sold. Now, with any preview anywhere in Counterpoint, anytime you get a report preview, you can always export it to another application, provided you have that application installed on your computer, like Excel. So if you click on this envelope with the arrow, these are the formats you can choose from, and then you can select a destination, either the application itself, meaning as soon as you say OK, you get a couple pop-ups, and then Counterpoint will launch Acrobat automatically, even though it's not already open, and you'll be able to see the report through that application. Or you can save it to disk file, just meaning maybe I want to save it to my desktop or a local folder on my hard drive. Another feature within the preview are these binoculars. So if you have a very large report and you say, whew, I forgot to filter for a particular item, like I really wanted to see, just pants. If you click on this binocular, it'll search any value you see on this report. So I'll just type pants. And then find next and see how it found pants. And I can click on find next again, and it found the description for pants. Okay, and then there are no more instances. So I'm going to find another value here to point out, in case you ever see this on your report. So see how I have an item here and it says NA? If you've ever worked with me, you hear me sing this song of Don't Delete, Just Disable. When you delete items and you run a sales report where that item was still in existence, it'll return the item number on the report, but not the description. And that's why it says NA, and again, why I always tell people not to delete. Okay, so I'm going to close out of here, And I'm going to close out of here. So I really like this report. And you know what? I don't want to have to build it from scratch every single time I want to run this report. So I'm going to come down to Options, Save Parameters, and I'm going to give the report a name, Item Sales. Then, just to make things pretty, I'm going to copy this by doing, window shortcuts, Control C, or you can right click and copy. Then I'm going to copy that title down to the description using Control V as in victory. Whoops, come on down here. Control V as in victory, or right click paste. And so now I'm just going to click on Save. And so if I go back to Options and load parameters the next time I want to run the report, there's my item sales. And the fact that I gave it a description populates this column. Now, once you have a basic report set up, you can actually leverage that and copy these values to other reports, like the columns that you selected, or the dynamic dates that you selected, or the store that you selected, and it's super easy. So I'm going to create a sales by category report. I'm going to use this drop down. I'm going to choose item ticket history line and item category. So notice it still has all here. It's still going to print an order by sales. It's choosing year to date automatically, and it automatically selects my columns. And it automatically unchecks dollar rounding. So all I have to do is go to Options, Save Parameters, and now I'm going to give it, another name. Now, because I copied from the item sales report, it looks like I'm going to overwrite this report, but you're really not, so don't be afraid. I'm going to call this Sales by Category. And again, I'm just going to copy this, Control C, down to the description, Control V, and save. And now when I go to Options, Load Parameters, you can see my Sales by Item report is still here, and now I have Sales by Category. When you are loading these reports, and you might get here and say, well, you know what? I really don't want to see year-to-date sales for everything. I just want to see my top 20 performers in this date range. So if you use this drop-down and click on top, and then go ahead and put in your value here, and then go ahead and run your report and get the information that you like. So again, my top performer here was the same item, and I can see my top 20 and go to the last page and get totals for my top 20. After you're done running the report, if you don't resave the parameters because you're just changing things on the fly, once you exit and go back in, Counterpoint resets the report back to the way it was when you originally created it. So I'm going to go to Options, Load Parameters. I'm going to choose my item sales, and you can see that it reverts back to all. So don't be afraid to make changes or to filter for things because, again, even though you may filter, even if you change dates, as long as you don't save those parameters, it'll reset back to the original. So some useful reports that I find for most people, based on my experience in retail and my experience with Counterpoint clients, certainly an item number report, item category. I think primary vendor is also a great report to run, sales by primary vendor. And down here under ticket history for, kind of protecting your payroll and finding out, what your trend days, your busiest days of the week. There's a day of week report, which I like that one. There's also a month report and a month day report, and there's also an hour report. And when you select one of these, month, day, or month, the print and order by will logically default to, well, month and day, and if it doesn't, you can always use this drop down and come up here to the top and say, arrange this report in order by month and day. And then, of course, once you're done building the report, you want to go to Options, Save Parameters, and give the report a name. But month, day, day of week, hour of day, very, very good for projecting your staffing needs. So that's sales analysis by group. Now, I also mentioned there was a mirrored report, same steps, same rules, called unposted sales analysis. This report came out a couple of years ago with a service pack, and we were very excited about it because up until then, the only way you could see today's sales was to do maybe a drawer reading or run an edit list. So this report lives under point of sale, reports, unposted sales analysis, and it uses the same steps as the sales history by group. Select a report, 7, 10, or 11, or traditional. Use this drop-down, select a report you want to build. Now the only difference here is it says document header instead of ticket header, and it says document line instead of ticket line. So I already built an item level report, so let's just go to options and load parameters. There's my sales by item, and we'll give it a minute to load. So here's the report, item number, print all, print in order by sales. There are no comparative date ranges because its only purpose is to look at today's sales. You know, when like maybe you do your 1 o'clock reading or your 5 o'clock reading to see how you're doing in sales so far, and if you're on target to meet your goal. And then under select columns, I chose sales, cost, quantity sold. I have 6 of 7 columns. I'm going to uncheck the dollar rounding, and then if I want to filter, I could use the document header or the document line. Then since I've set up this report and I'm happy with it, I'm going to go to Options, Save Parameters. Now I did change a parameter, so I'm just going to click on Save. And I'm going to just overwrite because I want this to not dollar round. And so now I have my built report. And just like in sales analysis by group, this can become a basis or a copy for the next report I'm going to build, which is going to be sales by category. So I'm going to use this drop down, and I'm going to choose item category. It retains the print all. It retains the print in order by sales. Of course, it remembers today's date and the fact that I selected the main. And then when I go to select columns, it remembers the columns and the fact that I don't want to dollar round. Now all I have to do is save the report. Options, Save Parameters. I'm going to call this, and again, it looks like I'm overwriting the original report, but I'm really not. Sales by category. And then I can come down here to the description, and I can, oh, forgot to copy. So I'm going to go there, Control C, Control V, and copy and save. And while I'm here, there is a show pie chart feature. This is not practical on an item level report. This is also available in the sales history by group. It's not practical at the item number level. You have too many slices of the pie and they overwrite each other. It is fairly practical when you're doing something pretty broad like sales by category or sales by vendor. So if I preview, it just gives you a little eye candy. So you can see I'm not selling out of too many categories these days. And this is your only option. So there's no bar graph or line graph. It's just this pie chart. And if you have lots and lots of categories, you might find these words overlapping and kind of crowding each other out, and that's just the nature of Crystal. Okay, I'm going to close out of there. So that's unposted sales analysis. How am I doing so far today? And that brings me to merchandise analysis. And as I mentioned earlier, the beauty of a merchandise analysis report is I can break out my locations. Where sales analysis, if I say all locations, they all get combined. In merchandise analysis, that report will break out the locations. And I can also add multiple data types to one report. So if I go to Inventory, Reports, and then I'm going to go to Merchandise Analysis. Okay, again, lots of decisions to make. So first of all, what do you want to analyze? You want to analyze by group and get a very summarized report? Or do you want to analyze by item and get a very granular report? Do you just want top 10? No, I want all. How do you want to rank the report? And again, I like sales or quantity sold, so I'm just going to choose sales. Do you want to group the report? Now, this is a feature of merchandise analysis that's not available in sales analysis. Because I get this question all the time. I'd like to see my category sales, Gina, and I see that we have a category report, but I don't see the items associated with that category. So this is where you can come here and you can choose category or even vendor. So I'm just going to separate it out by category. And then here on this date range, I'm telling Counterpoint to analyze my items and arrange them by category. Over here, if I'm multi-store and I choose all locations and I want to see each location broken out, I have to show location detail. This is also where I can exclude dollar rounding. Or if I have location groups set up, I've got a location group for all my stores, another location group for just my main and my east store, and another location for my main and storage. Or you could just select a specific location. I'm just going to go ahead and do all locations. And again, I want to see location detail. Now, select columns. There's so much more here than when you come here by default. So if you'll notice how big my scroll bar is, if I come down here to this switch, show all columns, look how small that scroll bar became. So lots and lots of elements that you can put in here, including those KPIs like sell-through and weeks on hand. That's down here, theoretical sales, turn, lots of stuff. So here I have the number of transactions, quantity sold, sales, cost of sales, profit, profit margin. So I'm just going to see how this looks and click on preview. Okay, it looks great. And I like the fact that the report's not wrapping. I can read it really quickly, left to right. And then you'll notice that because I have multiple locations, it's showing me the item, the description of the item, my locations, East, Main, and Storage, the number of transactions at each of those locations in that date range, how many I sold at each of those locations in that date range, my net sales in that date range for each location, my cost of sales, this is average cost by the way, and profit, and then it gives me a little total down here. So after each item you get a total of all locations combined. And again, like any other report in Counterpoint, you can export it, or if you need to search values, you can use the binoculars. Now I'm going to eliminate some of these columns here because I do want to see, I don't need number of transactions, I want to see how many I sold in that date range, what my sales were, my cost of sales, but I'm also interested in my weeks on hand. So I'm going to just get weeks on hand in here, which is up a little bit higher. There's no shortcut here, by the way. You literally have to scroll for this. I'm going to just double click on weeks on hand. All right, so now I'm asking Counterpoint to do is to analyze the quantity sold in this date range, and based on my rate of sales in that date range and my current quantity on hand, how many weeks on hand do I have? So I need another value called quantity on hand just so I can see what it is. So I'm going to go up here to quantity on hand. I want to mention something about this value. There are two values in here, quantity on hand and quantity on purchase order. So I'm going to get quantity on purchase order. These two values ignore this date range. So quantity on hand means right now at this moment in time. It doesn't care about the date range. The quantity sold cares about the date range, and so does the weeks on hand. But quantity on hand means right now at this very moment in time. And for quantity on purchase order, Counterpoint's looking at all your open purchase orders, no matter how old they are. And it's going to tell you how many you have on purchase orders based on all your open purchase orders, whether they're partially received against or not received against at all. This is why I always advise people that you need to clean up your PO module from time to time, because if you have POs that are 5, 6 years old, they're going to show up on this report. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and preview. And so you can see, like right here for this first item, I have a total 17 sold in that date range. I currently have 307 units on hand as a company, meaning I have enough stock to keep me stocked for 250 weeks. So I probably overbought this item a little bit. Now I like this report, especially because it gives me the category and then the items within the category, as you can see, plus my location detail, which is nice. So now I want to save the report because I don't want to build it from scratch every single time I want to see weeks on hand. So I'm going to go to Options, Save Parameters, and I'm just going to give it a name like weeks on hand. And I'm going to come down here and again call it weeks on hand, and then save. And so now when I go to options and load parameters, my weeks on hand report is here. I can load it. And just like with the sales analysis by group, I save this as year to date with the dynamic date of year to date. But today when I'm running the report, I just want to see week to date. So I can change the date, run the report. There we are, my sales week to date. And based on my sales week to date, you can see I have 23 weeks left on hand. Then when I close the report, because I haven't saved anything, I close the report and I reload it, it's going to go back to the original settings. So I'm just going to go to Options, Load Parameters, find my weeks on hand, click on Load, and you can see it reset itself year to date. Okay, so that's merchandise analysis. You can build tons and tons of reports under merchandise analysis. Another report that I really like is the inventory status report, especially if you carry apparel because it does break apart your matrix. So this report is under Inventory, Reports, Inventory Status. And there's lots of switches here that you can change to get different results, depending whether you're single store or multi-store. So you'll notice that there's 6 reports here. So for single store, you can do inventory status by item, inventory status by vendor, inventory status by category. Now, if you're multi-store, you have the same 3 reports, but it's going to look at all your locations. So I'm going to choose by location. Then some other decisions you need to make is include items if the quantity on hand are non-zero, above minimum, below minimum, above maximum, out of stock, above zero, or all. When it comes to your grids, notice how this cell area, group cells by, it's all grayed out. You have to actually use this drop down and choose one of these list values. So if you choose a list value, then this opens up and you can say, I want to see cells within a location or a location within the cell or in cell display order, by color and by size. And then this down here, you can change to inventory value stock status, or you can leave it at last received, last sold, last counted. I really like the stock status because it does look to my current on hand and my minimums and lets me know if I'm under, over my minimum, or out, meaning I've got a negative value in my inventory. So I'm just going to go ahead and preview. So you can see here's my item number. Here are my locations, breaking it out by location. And I even have totals for all locations combined. And then here you can see my averaged unit cost, my current on hand at each location, items on a PO, and again, this is looking at all your open POs. I can see my min and my max. And when I see something that's out, it's because I have either none on hand or I'm in the negatives. When I see over, it means my on hand is higher than my minimum. When I see under, it means my on hand is below my minimum. And again, you can go to the last page to get your totals. So nice report. And again, the beauty of it is it does break out your matrices. Let's see if I can find. Here we go. So you can see here, because I chose location and then cell, it shows me the location and then each color at the location. Oh, got a little quick happy there. So that is inventory status. All right, I'm going to close out of that. Hands down, one of my favorite reports is the inventory history report because it'll give me the history of an item and every transaction that ever affected the item. So just for an example, I'm going to go to inventory and I'm going to go to items and I'm going to find one of my items. And this one I want the cow caddy. Whoops, not the daddy. Spelling counts. There it is. So for you multi-store people, understand that quantity on hand and quantity available is a company value, not the value of the location that you're currently logged into. It is a company-wide value. Well, I see as a company I have 28. I wonder how many I have at each one of my locations. So I'm going to zoom in on this, and I can see at east I have 22, and at storage I have 6. Huh, I wonder how that east got up to 22. So I'm going to run the inventory history report. Another nice thing about the inventory history report is if you wonder how this last cost got to be this value, the history report's going to tell you. So I'm going to close out of here. I'm going to start at the beginning. Inventory, reports, and inventory history. Here's my recommendation when it comes to inventory history. You may have many problem children items in your inventory. Don't try and run the report for all your problem items. Focus on one, because if you figure out what's wrong with one, you're probably going to know what's wrong with the other. The other reason I don't like you filtering on multiple items in this report, you'll see in a minute, it can be really overwhelming. So usually when I run this report, I use this drop down. I organize it by date and type. I like to see detail. And then on the inventory history tab, this is where I'm going to select my item number. And there it is. And for the location, I actually modified this filter. Let me load a parameter here because I think my parameter is different on this. Let me show you how it looks by default. So if you come to this report, you're like, well, this doesn't look like what Gina showed us. So by default, it says location is between, and then I'm going to right click and simplify. So if I just want to see my east and my storage, and I go in here and I say location east, and then I pick storage in the second cell, it's going to include the main because this value is a between. I want to see everything from east and anything in between down to storage. So a little filtering trick I'm going to show you when you just want random locations, or maybe in another report you want random items, not this range. So to customize a filter, right click, customize. I'm going to go to this value, location between. I'm going to click on the word between and choose is in. This is so cool. So when you choose is in, you can have up to three random locations, or you can choose one or two. So I'm going to go ahead and reselect that item. And then I'm going to say, I only want to see east and storage because they're the two locations that actually have quantities. Now notice I'm not going to put a transaction date here, and here's why. I want to see everything that happened to these items from the dawn of time. And if I run this without transaction dates, my quantity on hand at the end of the report will equal the value I see on the item master as a company. So if you do filter by transaction dates, that number won't match the current value in inventory as far as your quantity on hand. So just understand that. There's nothing wrong with filtering by dates. But now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to preview. So you can see here that in my east location, I did a receiving and increased the inventory by 7. And then I did another receiving and increased the inventory by 15. And apparently this item is a very slow mover because I haven't sold any. And I have 22 now at east. Now my storage, I did a receiving and increased the inventory by 8. And I did a transfer out, which is why this says -2. If this were a positive value, it would mean a transfer in. And then you can see I have 6 and 28 is the total, which equals what I see on the item record right now. So that's inventory history. By the way, if you see anything for like physical inventory, let me just select another item that I know I've inventoried. Let's see, I think it's called a windbreaker. And I'm going to remove these locations. And preview. Okay, so anytime you see physical count, this is not the actual physical count the day you did the count. This was the adjustment to the item. So you can see here I did a physical count where Counterpoint did a downward adjustment of 405 units. I did another physical count where it did a downward adjustment of 168 units. And then I did yet another physical count where it did an upward adjustment of 405. So that 405 is not the count of the item, it's the adjustment to the item. And then, of course, you can see your cost here. And when you have curious questions about the cost, it's typically a cost that was entered incorrectly on a receiving or a quick receiving. And you would be able to see that here pretty clearly. So that's inventory history. Good stuff. Next, I'm going to talk about the valuation reports. So there's three of them. There's retail value. Obviously, what's the retail value of my inventory? There's historical valuation. What was my inventory worth at this point in time? And there's valuation. What's the value of my inventory right now at this very moment? I'm going to start with retail value. So you have some decisions you can make here. Do you want a summarized report, then analyzed by group? If you want something very granular and detailed, analyzed by item. Print top, bottom, or all. I usually do all. And then notice it's got a beginning balance, which is a pretty nice feature of this report. I can group it by category if I like. Oh, come on back here. So what this report is going to show is the retail value starting on January and then the retail value as of April 7th, which is pretty nice to be able to see that. Now, again, you can do all locations, a location group, or a specific location. You can, if you do all locations, you can get a breakout, get the location detail, and of course, you'll want to print cost and you'll want to print units. You can uncheck dollar rounding if you like, and you can filter for sections of the inventory on these tabs. So I'm just going to go ahead and preview. Okay, let's come down to an item where we can actually see some figures. So here, this one's pretty good. Now I want to see some differences here. Let's go to the next page. Here's a good one. Okay, so you can see here the apparel totals. I have a retail value, a cost, that's average cost by the way, and a unit value. So what it's saying here is the beginning value as of January 1st was in retail $44,000. There were no receivings. There were upward adjustments of 632. So this plus this minus my sales gives me my ending balance. And you can see that here too. This is what I started with. I did some adjustments. So this plus this minus this equals this. And of course, we can go to the last page here, or the second to the last page, and scroll to the bottom and see our report totals. So that's retail value. And I know it's called a retail value report, but it does show you cost values. So that's pretty nice that you see both those values on one report. When it comes to the historical valuation, again, analyze by group or analyze by item. Change your print to all. Rank it by quantity. There's no sales in here, so you would just rank it by quantity, or you could rank it by retail value, but quantity is most logical. You can group it. I'm going to group it by category. And down here on the valuation date, you're saying, you're telling Counterpoint the point in time you want to analyze. So Counterpoint, I want to know what the value of my inventory was as of January 1st, 2020. And again, I can do all locations, show location detail, or I can do a location group and show location detail, or I can do a specific location. And you'll notice when I choose specific location, this becomes grayed out because it's just one location. And I can uncheck or leave dollar rounding checked. And so now I'm going to click on preview. So here is the item number, the description, the vendor, the subcategory, and then you get a second line under here. So you can see you got subcategory and quantity, price, one, and cost. So here's my subcategory, here's my quantity, here is my current price Here's my current cost and the negatives. Oh no. Let's find another one. Here's a good one. Uh, Here is my current quantity. Here's my current unit price and my extended cost. And this is just showing regular price. That's that manufacturer suggested retail if you populate that field. So that's historical valuation. And technically, what historical valuation does is it actually looks at your current values and works backwards to the date, by taking into account and analyzing your receivings, your adjustments, your transfers, physical inventory. So that's how it figures this out. Starts with current and works backwards to the date that you specify. Now, valuation means right now, this very moment in time. So you can run this at a detail level or a summary level. And that's really your only choices other than how do you want to order it by. And these are all descriptive values, so no sales values in here. So I want to value the report as of this very moment in time. And by default, it excludes items that are not equal to zero. So it'll show you your negatives and your positives, but nothing where there's zero. By default, this location field is not here. So if you're multi-store and you want to run a valuation report for each store separately, you're going to need to right-click, customize, click here to add a condition, and it brings over this random condition. You just click on that random condition, choose location, and then is exactly, and then you would filter, and then you could choose a location. See, there's no way here to say all locations. If you leave this filter blank, it's going to look at all locations and combine the numbers. So if you just want to see a specific location, you'll need to modify the filter. So I'm going to go into the lookup. I'm going to choose Maine, click OK, and I'm going to go ahead and preview. And here's the detailed report of the value of my inventory at this very moment in time. Here's my item, here's my description, category, subcategory, vendor, and then down here my current quantity on hand, my unit values, price, average cost, one of the very few reports that actually shows you last cost, and then the inventory value. These are extended values, the average, the last cost, and the retail. Now, if I were actually specifying all locations, this is what it looks like. So I'm just going to click on preview. So it would show me each location broken down. Now there's a summarized version of the same report. So I'm just going to click on summary and click on preview. And so this is a summarized version. Again, it's combining all the locations together and giving you totals for each, for the locations combined. So detail, you can break out your location. Summary, you can't. So that's it. That's valuation reports. So with that said, I am going to go ahead and bring up the PowerPoint presentation and finish off where we left off. Okay, so hopefully after today, you'll know how to build a sales history report, how to build a merchandise analysis report, save the parameters and load the parameters when you want to run the reports, and also how to run an inventory status report, do an audit on an item with inventory history, and be able to run one of your 3 evaluation reports, whether it's historical or current. Now, don't forget to fill out your survey. You'll get a copy of the video, a copy of today's recording, either by Friday or next Monday, and a survey is attached. It's a real quick yes, no, give me some feedback survey. And I always appreciate feedback, so please fill out your survey. And you can remain anonymous, by the way. Next month is going to be exciting. We're going to talk about price rules. This is a very, very powerful feature in Counterpoint. Now, we all know we can discount on the fly at point of sale, but did you know you could have Counterpoint automatically discounting without people thinking about it? And you can do that through promotional pricing, contract pricing, and this wonderful feature called mix match codes for your BOGOs. And these price rules can get quite granular. You can be pretty complicated with these. Like on Tuesdays, my senior citizens get 25% off golf items after 5 o'clock. That's how granular a price rule can be. So don't forget to attend. I believe the first Wednesday in May is May the 7th, I want to say. Don't quote me on that. You'll get an email. Just make sure you sign up, and hopefully I see you next month. Okay, so if you need any one-on-one training, just give me a call at extension 3. I'm happy to work with you. So that's the main number, extension 3. And with that, we'll go to Q&A. So let's see. Uh, what if you maxed out your favorites? Yeah, you only have oh, May 5th is the first Wednesday. Thank you. So May 5th, not May 7th. I was wrong. May 5th is the first Wednesday in May. If you maxed out your favorites, because you are only allowed to have 15 favorites, if you add another, try to add another favorite, Counterpoint will just tell you you're maxed out. So you might have to, sacrifice a favorite so that you can get, a new favorite that is going to be more helpful for you. And that's a good question. So I'm just going to come down here, open up Counterpoint. So this is what you only can have 15 here. So let me just add some more. Let's see. I'll show you what happens when you max them out. And I still haven't maxed them out. So let me go grab some more stuff. Let's get this, and we'll get this, and this, and this. There you go. You have reached the limit of favorites because you can only have 15. So, oh man, look at that. I got 6 here, and 3 here. I don't know why they didn't go up to 18. That just, I've often wondered why didn't it just go up to 18? Why 15? But if you need to make room on your favorites bar, you can just click on the star and then it'll remove it from the favorites. And then you'll have room for more. Okay, but the max is 15. Okay, good question. What is the value considered for retail valuation report if you have alternate unit prices? That's a good question. So that retail value doesn't look at your alternate units. It's just looking at your main stocking unit. And by that, I mean what's on the main tab. So, in other words, Counterpoint, if you use alternate units, and I'll just use my Cow Caddy as an example. Okay, let's say I stocked this by the each and by the 6-pack, and I have 1 6-pack and 12 eaches. Well, that is a combination of 28 eaches. So never ever in Counterpoint, anywhere in Counterpoint, will it say you have 12 eaches and 1 6-pack. It just breaks everything down to the each. So 12 plus 6 equals, I'm sorry, my math is terrible. 20, 22 plus 6 is 28. But when you're running that valuation report, it's looking here, okay, not the alternate units. Okay, that was a really good question. Okay, any other questions? I wonder if we have 15. We don't seem to have that many. Are you asking how many items you have with alternate units? Because you can't have 15 alternate units. You can only have, favorites. I wonder if we have 15. We don't seem to have that many. If you come down to favorites here, if you have, I'm going to go to the first page. If you have more than 6 favorites, this little sidebar will light up. And then when I go here, if this is all full, I'll get another bar that lights up. If there's no bar here, it means I can make more favorites. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that real quick so you can see what that looks like. I'll make this a favorite and this a favorite. So now here's my first 6, here's my second 6, but because I have more than 12, this little sidebar opens up and shows me the remainder. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, does anyone else have any questions? Well, as usual, I really appreciate your time. Don't forget your survey and be on the lookout for that video, which you can share with other members of your organization. And hopefully I see, got one more question real quick, under the wire there. Let's see. Can you talk about another report? Sure, I can talk about another report. What do you want to know? Unless it's complicated, then I'll just give you a phone call. The multiply, that's a very long conversation. So we can work one-on-one on that, and I'll explain it to you. But that's a really long conversation. The best way to see discounts, again, that's going to be on your sales analysis report, and there's kind of a gotcha in there. Counterpoint introduced discounts kind of piecemeal. You know, there's line price overrides, and then there's transaction discounts, and then there's price group discounts. So the best way to see your discounts on your sales analysis, I'm just going to go ahead and load this report here, my sales by item. This is what I would do. I would come to select columns here, and I would actually put in a value called sales price 1, and I would move that up, and then I would put in another value called discounts from price 1. And so if it's arranged like this, let's get rid of one of these columns here. It'll show you what the full price was of the item before it was discounted, minus the discount will equal the net sale for this date range. Here's what it doesn't do. It doesn't tell you what discount was applied. It just looks at all discounts, whether it was a price override, a transaction discount, or a discount from a price rule. But when you preview it, it is a fairly nice report. So you can see here, this is what it rang up as full price. Here's the extended discount, and so here's the net. Although it looks here that that's not a very good example. Let's do this one here. This is a better example. Here's full price minus the discount equals the net. Now, sometimes people say, but I want to see what discount applied. Well, then you're going to be running a bunch of different reports. If you want to see discounts that came from a price override, you would choose this price override reason code. And this would look at your, on the fly, I highlight a price and I just discount that one item. If you want to focus on your transaction discounts, it's going to be called discount code. And if you want to focus on your price rule discounts, it's price group code. But all three don't live on the same report. It literally is 3 different reports. So good question. And it looks like I got a couple more here. Okay, is there a report that I can view only the items that sold on a previous day, no other items? Yeah, if you run sales history, the sales history is only looking at items that were sold. It's not looking at your entire inventory like a merchandise analysis. So if you run sales and a merchandise analysis, it's showing you your entire inventory because that's what that report looks at. It looks at your inventory. It's not looking at tickets. So if you just want to focus on sales for yesterday and not your entire inventory, it's just going to be sales analysis by group, and you're going to do the item number report and put in yesterday's date range. So that's a good question too, and a good observation. Okay, can you use 7 column? Can you use 7 or just 6? Oh, another very good question. Yeah, even if you do, you don't have to use 7 columns. I mean, you can see here, I did use 7, but if I eliminate one, Counterpoint doesn't get mad. I could even say, well, I want a 10 column, but I'm really only going to add 8 because 7 just isn't quite enough. I really need that 8th column, and I know it'll fit. So yeah, you don't have to use 7 just because you chose that. Okay, very good questions. Is it possible to extend a column width on a receiver report or description is getting cut off? That would be a customization. So there's not a mechanism within Counterpoint for you to actually design your forms, like your receiving, your POs. We actually have to do that in Crystal reports. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, you're much more lively than my morning group. Lots of good questions. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in May. Have a great afternoon.